I saw a beam of light everywhere. And then the moment I saw those beam of light, I thought to myself, the rapture is here.
It's like in the corner of her eye, seeing like a little boy or like a little ghost going to one of the rooms.
It's a journey in the self too, because you find your intuition and discernment. But we got to realize that there's duality here.
Maybe 6 or 8 times over the course of a couple of years, I would wake up to this dark figure standing at the foot of my bed.
The green agenda is the obliteration of the human soul. They use children to do that. They can't do it without children. They need pure souls. And you cannot conduct a black mass without pure souls.
When you see that there's darkness, Satan exists, or that there's evil on earth, or that there's actually demons or whatever, I think it's a frequency when we're all together, really.
The light started like flicking off and on. So it was like a toddler, like a 5-year-old or 4-year-old.
At one point it started to gruff. I heard howls. I heard like this puffing sound, and I was petrified. I had no idea what it was.
Well, the demons are here, and they are going to steal the children.
Welcome to the show, everybody. You're listening to Apocalyptic Anomalies, where we shine light on the shadows to unlock all the secrets of our universe. I'm your host, Abner J. Valdés. If you have a crazy experience or story you want to share on the show, email me at apocalypticanomalies@gmail.com. That's apocalypticanomalies@gmail.com. Or you can hit me up on Instagram or Facebook. Either way works for me. Just get in contact with me. Today on the show, we have Harley Owens, Facebook page creator of Bigfoot Reports and Data. He comes on the show and talks to us about his Bigfoot and Dogman experiences. Very interesting episode. So let's get into the show right now. Sit back and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the show, Harley Owens. How are you doing today?
I'm doing extremely well. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for having me on, my friend.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Glad you could make it. Glad you could be here with me on the show today. Before we start the show, can you give the audience a brief bio about yourself and tell the audience where they can find you and your work, please?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Harley Owens. I'm 24 years old. I'm from East Tennessee, close to the North Carolina border. I'm a Bigfoot researcher, lineman. I work on the power lines. I am married to my lovely wife, Gabrielle, and we have 2 beautiful girls. So, I never expected to do Bigfoot research, and lo and behold, I had my first experience with one over almost 4 years ago, coming up in September. So now it's like my whole world has changed, and I've created a Facebook group is what I started first. Wow. And it took off. It has almost 5,000 members now. I created a YouTube channel. I'm at 907 subscribers. I'm almost at 1,000, so I'm tickled with that. And I've got TikTok and Instagram, but it's all under the same name, Bigfoot Reports and Data. It's the and symbol, so you can check it out there. And I'm just glad to be here. This looks like a great show because I've watched a few of the videos, and it looks really well done, and I got to give you credits on that because it looks good.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. And I thank you for being here as well. So I'm glad that you touched base on your Facebook page, Bigfoot Reports and Data. I'm going to make sure I get the links at the end before we hang up so I can put it on the description of the show. So what made you want to start the Facebook page?
Yeah, because, I know from what I experienced after my first encounter was ridicule from not just friends, my family as well. I got a lot of hate from it. I was the crazy person. I was like, I'm going to start a Facebook group. It don't hurt nothing. It's free, and you get to meet and connect with people. And I figured I'd have 500 members, and no, it exceeded my expectations dramatically.
That's amazing.
It's a safe place for people to come in, share their encounters without the ridicule. I've got a great admin and moderators team, so we keep it all at a minimum.
That's awesome, man. Awesome. And you mentioned when we talked last time that you had experienced some encounters and stuff like that. Can you start us off with the first encounter you experienced and kind of set the ground for us in the audience to kind of see, from your perspective and your vision on how everything happened?
Yeah, absolutely. This happened September 23rd, 2020. It was my first experience with a Bigfoot. So here's the little backstory behind that. The week prior, at this time, before I was a lineman, I worked with my dad's neighbor, which was an auction company, and we went apart, taking apart sawmills and stuff. So we got up there a week prior to me having this experience, and I'm talking to the owner of this place, and he's warning us about this bear that's rummaging around through the dumpster. And I was like, is he a pretty good sized bear? He said, yeah, he is a pretty good sized bear. He said, but there's far worse things in the mountains than that. And that kind of stuck with me because I grew up hunting and fishing. And I'm like, well, what's worse than that? And I jokingly go around like Black Panther, but I know there's rattlesnakes, copperheads, all of them other things that you need to worry about in Appalachia, and besides the supernatural stuff, which I did not believe in at that time because I was a skeptic, non-believer in the cryptid world. So going on really the rest of that week, nothing happened. We had the auction on a Saturday, and my boss come up to me after the auction. He said, you want to stay up here another week to help people load stuff? And I was like, yeah, I'll stay. So he sent the other guys to a new location to get the next auction started. So the next day, which was a Sunday, it was raining all day, and I was like, I'm not going to sit in a hotel all day. I can go out here and get some work done. So I got done what I could do without having to have big equipment there because we were going to have to come back anyway. And so I get out there Sunday, and I get what I needed to do done. I didn't have much to do. And I got done, and I was like, well, I'm going to walk around the wood line. So I started walking around the wood line, and I find a trackway with some tracks in the mud. And I was like, well, that's a big foot. And I'm 6'6", I wear a size 12 boot, and it was about 3 or 4 inches longer than mine. And I was like, that's a big foot. And, I was like, somebody bigger than me walking around out here homeless or something. I was like, that's weird. I jokingly said Bigfoot. And Monday, nothing happened. Tuesday, nothing happened. September 23rd of 2020, that was the day that changed my life forever, quite literally. So I get out there that morning about 7 o'clock, and there's already a guy at the gate waiting on me. I was like, well, he's early. I kind of felt bad because he's waiting because I should have probably been there a little earlier, but it didn't really matter. So I get to the first gate, unlock it, and then we get down to the second gate, and I unlock it. And we're going into this sawmill area, and he had like 3 pallets of stuff, so I just hopped on a Kubota skid steer loader, and I just forked them up and threw him on his trailer and sent him on his way. So nobody else showed up for the rest of that day, and I was sitting there in the Kubota skid steer. I was playing a game on my phone. I think I was playing Angry Birds, if I'm not mistaken. I think it may have been, but I was getting a little hungry. It got about 1:30, so I got out of the skid steer and I started walking over to the service truck to get a Coca-Cola and a peanut butter sandwich out of my cooler. Well, I opened the cooler and I heard this growlish grunt, and I was like, "What was that?" Because I never heard a sound like that. And I was like, "Well, maybe it was that bear." So I heard it again, and I looked up on this cliff face, and I could see it walking along this cliff face. I was like, well, that could be that bear, because I could just see it moving through the foliage. I didn't get a really good look at it. I just seen something black moving. And I was just sitting there, and I got my Coke and my sandwich out, and I looked back down, and I looked back up, and I seen it leaning out looking at me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a Bigfoot. These things are real. People are not crazy. And so the only thing that I knew of to do was to take a photograph of this thing. I wasn't going to try and video it because I knew as sure as I did it would have been gone. So I just pulled my phone out, and I snapped a picture, and then the weirdest thing happened with my phone. It just shut off. Now, I had like 70-something%. I think I had 74% battery or somewhere along that line. And it was just drained of everything. And I was like, holy crap. And it was sitting there looking at me still. And all of a sudden, this thing just turns around and it walks back into the woods, and I never seen it again. And I went into the truck and I plugged my phone up. I mean, I was just waiting for this phone to come back on. And I was looking and just waiting, and then it comes on, and I just go through it, because it was a brand new iPhone 8 Plus that I had at this time, and I've still got this phone to this day, and it's still messed up. And I was just sitting there looking at the picture, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. I've got a picture of a Bigfoot. So going on the rest of that day, I was on high alert. Oh. And right around dusky dark, that's when the vocalization started. The first set I captured was that night. And they were unlike anything I have ever heard. There were loud whoops and yells and different audio in there that they were doing. Like I don't even know how to explain the sounds. They were mournful in a way and just different. So going on that next day, the 24th, I get back out there. I didn't have anybody out there, and I find a trackway from where this creature came down to the area where it was at, and it crossed the creek bed and came into the sawmill area. And I'm 6'6", and I could not do the stride in between each track. I've got a video for scale of that, and I've got photographs of these tracks, and it was remarkable. And so going on later that night, about dusky dark, was when they hollered the night before. They started hollering again. And I got 2 audios recorded from that night, and they were 15 minutes apart. And I had a spectral analysis done of this audio, and these creatures' vocalizations range from 200 hertz all the way up to 2,000 hertz. So it's way out of the range of a human or anything like that. So going on that next day, Friday,
Wow.
I was leaving. I was getting out of there because I was ready to come home. And I go to this drive-in diner called Robo's, and I meet up with these old timers, and I'm sitting there talking with them. And I initially struck up the conversation. Y'all ever seen anything weird in these woods? And they all kind of looked at each other, and one of them said, well, what did you see? I said this, and I showed them the picture and let them look at it, and I showed them the video with the tracks and trackway, and I let them listen to the sounds, and they were like, that's a devil monkey. And I was like, a devil monkey? I said, so that's a Bigfoot? And they said, yeah, devil monkey, Bigfoot, woodburger, mountain giant, it's all the same thing. And just to have that validation from them old timers, that was meaning a lot to me, because that way I knew I wasn't just, imagining what I seen. It was unbelievable. And, I got home and I was showing the pictures and the videos and the audio, and they were like, well, that's just a shadow, or that's just somebody with a big foot. Or the audio was what really kicked me. The people were saying it was elk. People were saying it's coyotes. People were saying it was coon dogs, and it was none of that. And it's but some people don't want to really accept the reality of these creatures, and and it's kind of hard to I've not talked to my parents in a long time. It's hard. It really is.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff right there. How big would you say this foot was? How big in length and width?
I'd say it was about 16, 17 inches. It was a good 3 or 4 inches longer than my foot. I've got pictures of them and my foot next to the tracks. I'd say they were, probably 8 or 9 inches across at the toes. I would think. I didn't have no tape measure or nothing. I didn't even think. After that, I was still trying to process everything. That was the last thing on my mind, was a tape measure and measure and everything. That was, it was really the last thing on my mind.
Yeah, for sure. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people, you're willing to tell this story, and a lot of people won't believe it. But I feel glad that a lot of people still kind of believe it, and are on your side about this, because it kind of would make you feel crazy if no one believed you. You kind of be like, I know what I saw. I was there. I experienced it. This is what I went through,
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially, when you're just sitting there trying to do, eat your lunch or whatever, and then this thing pops up, and you have physical proof with a picture, right?
Mm-hmm. I got a picture of it, and I've got the tracks and the audio of these things.
Right, and just the picture alone, and then you said that your phone got messed up when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that gets me wondering. It's like, do these things have some type of special ability to do that? It almost makes you wonder. What's your opinion on that?
I think they, at first, before I started researching and stuff, I initially thought that they were an ancient primate or some kind of relic hominid. But it was when I had my second encounter, was when I really realized there was much more to these things than being just a primate. So I believe that these creatures emit a sound, which is, it's already proven that people think that these creatures do emit this sound, infrasound. It's above or below our hearing. And I believe this infrasound can have an effect on our technology, so to speak. Now, when people don't want to accept the supernatural side of these creatures, and and there's instances, you find these tracks in a field with no trees around, and the tracks just disappeared. Or people seeing these Bigfoot come out of portals, or whatever the case may be. Bigfoot with orbs or UFOs and all this other stuff, and they really tend to lean away from that. And I just want people to know that there is a lot more to these creatures than being just flesh and blood. Absolutely. And they're a lot closer to us than what we can imagine.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you look at a human being, right, we're not just a physical being. We have a spirit and a soul. A lot of people believe we have souls, we have spirits. And I tend to believe that we do because, I believe in the whole aspect of the Bible and stuff, the body, the spirit, and the soul. So, obviously these things, tend to have that as well, and maybe they can manipulate going in and out of this reality and their reality, which is very amazing stuff,
Absolutely, it is. It's really remarkable. And, what I think they are, I believe that they're Nephilim descendants, not the true Nephilim, but they're Nephilim descendants. I think some of them survived, the bloodline survived a flood, and they're still here till this day. And I actually recorded with the Bump podcast the other night, and he said a term to me that I have never heard before. He said "eloud," and he told me that this woman was sharing her experience, that she had a relationship with a Bigfoot, and it communicated with her telepathically and said that it was an eloud. Wow. And the eloud are the children of the Nephilim.
Can you go into that for me and for the audience? The eloud, the Nephilim. Can you explain that to us a little bit? Because I know what it is. I just want the audience to see it from your perspective and your point of view. What is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Nephilim were the offspring of the fallen angels and human women. Now the Nephilim are, they were giants, essentially. Like however tall they got. I'm sure they were really gigantic. But I think that going on into what we have now, it's just the genetics over time have just shrunk them down to be smaller and remain more hidden. And so essentially, if you go and look at the Sasquatch Genome Project, which there's a lot of DNA samples sent into that, and a huge inspiration for what I do was Scott Carpenter, and he collected samples from here in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And the mitochondrial DNA of a Sasquatch is a human mother from the Middle East. And the nuclear DNA is something completely unknown to science. And now, if you ask me, that's fallen angels. But I will say this. The fallen angels did not just procreate with human women. They procreated with animals as well. So essentially, I believe that brings in the dog man, these other man-like cryptid creatures. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, what was the name that gentleman gave you? I just want to write that down. Can you spell that out for us?
Eloud, E-L-I-O-U-D.
Okay. E-L-I-O-U-D?
Yep.
Wow, okay. Because as we're talking, right, as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking of a title for the episode. So this is good. It gets me brainstorming later on, and I can figure out where I want to go with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going back to that first encounter, when you saw this, right? What can you describe? How did it look? How tall do you think it was?
So
what kind of hair did it have?
It was about 70 yards away. For me, it was too close at the time, I thought. But from what I could tell, it was a jet black figure and probably 3.5, 4 foot across at the shoulders and maybe 7.5, 8 foot tall, if I was guessing properly. But I knew that I was puny compared to it as far away as it was. Now, wow. I actually had somebody run that photograph through a program on their computer, and this thing was not black. For 4 years, I thought this thing was black, but where it was in the shadows, and it was reddish brown. The enhanced image shows that it was reddish brown, and I could not believe it, because for 4 years, I thought it was black, and it was not.
Wow.
So
That
it
is
is
amazing,
unbelievable,
man.
you know. And it had long hair. Like whenever it had its arm leaning out, I could see the hairs hanging down. And I don't know how really long to say they were, because as far as the way it was, they could have been hanging down 6 inches, 8 inches. I don't know, but I know it had long, shaggy
Yeah.
hair.
Yeah, very amazing stuff. I mean, what kind of got me into looking into Scott Carpenter's videos, rest in peace. You know, one of the Bigfoot researchers out there. He was always in the woods from his videos that I saw, and I'm glad that his son is taking over his work and kind of just, you know, keeping it moving forward. That's excellent on his part. But one of the videos that got me really intrigued was when he was walking in the woods, and I believe one of the GoPros had caught something in the woods, kind of like
portal.
something. Yeah,
The
something
portal.
opening up. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And-
that is a great video.
And
That
you
is-
see like a face popping out, and you know, obviously he freaked out. He's like, I gotta get out of here. And once I saw that, I was like, okay. And then going back to what you said, I don't think these things are just physical things, man. It's very interesting stuff, man. You know, and I'm a strong believer in the Bible, so I always bring it back to the biblical text. And there's a lot of things in there that people kind of just skim through and don't really go into depth in. And I feel like a lot of those things are in there. So very
Absolutely,
interesting
it
stuff,
is.
man.
Absolutely, it is. And Tucker Carlson, he actually had somebody hand him over some documents that said that UFOs are demonic and they come from the ocean. And you know, and you hear a lot of these instances of abductions, and they rebuke it in the name of Jesus, and it stops.
I wonder why.
Because they're demonic. Right? There's no such thing as a coincidence, man. It's all there. Right. It's in the scripture, and you just got to look for it and find it.
Just got to look for it and find it. Seek knowledge, right? And you will find it. Very interesting stuff, man. I want to get into your second encounter that you had. Can you go into that encounter, lay out the ground for us, and kind of talk to us about it in detail as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit before this encounter happened, I went 3 years without hunting and fishing. So from after that first experience, I stopped hunting and fishing. I actually went back to the woods for the first time after that encounter this past Thanksgiving. I went out deer hunting. I killed an 8-point, and I was like, you know what? I've overcome what I thought was a fear of these creatures. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go out and start looking for these things. Well, I didn't know how to do it. And so I started looking up Bigfoot research in Tennessee, and Scott Carpenter's name pulled up. And unfortunately, he had then passed away. So he passed away in August, and I started doing this in December. And I was like, well, this is unfortunate. So I messaged his son, and, you know, I was talking with him, and we've become friends now. And I go out there December 7th. That was my very first day out. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was looking for. And it was 27 degrees that morning. I was freezing my butt off. And I was like, this ain't worth it. This is not worth it. So I ended up coming home. I was out there for maybe 2 hours. And I come home, I'm disheartened. And I'm just like, what did I do wrong? I was like, Scott made it look so easy. And I was like, hang on a second. I was like, because I went through and watched his videos really precisely, and I was like, well, he really took his time and like made sure he overlooked everything. And I was like, all right, it's worth a shot. And I get to looking through some of my footage, like the first 5 minutes of it, and I see a huge face in the laurels. I can see his big eyes. I can see a big nose. I can see a mouth. I can see a cone-shaped head. And I was just in awe. I showed my wife, and she said, holy cow, that's a Bigfoot. I was like, yeah. Wow. And not to mention, like, I got a video of one as well from that same day. And I was coming past an area, and there was a flat, and there was a drop off to the creek bottom. And you can see in the video a figure moving from right to left, and I've got the still capture of it from when it actually looked at me. And I never seen it. I never heard it. And it cleared this distance in 7 seconds. And I attempted to do a recreation of that, and it took me over a minute to get through all that stuff. It was so thick. So it was unbelievable. And I figured it was probably about 8.5, 9 foot tall, because it was walking off of the drop off, and its head was about a foot away from the leaning tree. But it was I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable. So a week later, December 14th, that was December 7th. So I bring my wife with me, and we're hiking up the trail, and we're on our way back out. And she says, "Look at that." I said, "What?" She said, "Those trees over there, they look like spears or something sticking up out of the ground." I was like, "Yeah." So I said, "I'll go look at it." I said, "You stay right here." So she stayed on the main trail, and I took off over through the woods. And I'm getting there, and I'm looking, and there's a bed in between these two laid down trees. And I stepped it off. It was 8.5 foot. And I was like, "Okay, well, this is something big." And I was like, "This is clearly not a bear." So I'm sitting there looking around, and I hear something moving through the laurels, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna see if I can follow it." I hollered at my wife. I said, "Stay right there." I said, "There's something moving over here." So I go in the direction of the noise, and I come across this huge game trail, and it's huge. I don't know if it's from the elk or the Sasquatch or what, but I was standing in the middle of that game trail, and I was looking, and I had the feeling I need to look to my right. And I looked to my right, and I see it, this huge reddish brown Bigfoot, and it walked right behind a tree. And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is a lot closer than the first time." Because that first experience, it was about 70 yards away. This one was much closer. It was between 25 and 30 yards away from me. It was standing behind a tree. And I was like, "Okay, this thing's going to come out of behind this tree at some point." I said, "I'm just going to stand here." It steps out from behind the tree, and it turns, and it's looking right at me. It's reddish brown. He's got gray looking skin. He got black eyes, and he squats down in behind this bush. And I'm just like, this is not happening. And he peeks his head out through the bush to look at me. And I can see it. He's just got reddish brown hair. He's got gray skin. He's got a little bit of hair around the mouth in this area right here. And he's got a big blobby looking nose, and it's these black eyes. And when I looked into this thing's eyes, there was a soul there. You know, there's something different about looking into those eyes. It was almost like looking into another person. And I was like, this is unbelievable. So almost instantly, to my left, there was a loud pop and a break, and I was like, "Okay." And then right behind me, I don't know how close it was, but there was just one stomping in place, and like I could feel the ground shaking. And I was like, "You know what? I got to get out of here." So I just took my time back to my wife, and I said, "We got to go now. We got to get out of here." But the funny thing was, I had my pistol on my right hand side. So I had a Bigfoot in front of me, one to my left, and one behind me. They know what guns are. Ain't nobody can tell me no different.
Wow. That's very interesting stuff. How did you feel initially, like when you saw this, when you were like, what is that, right? From the beginning of when it started happening to when it peaked out. How did you feel, man? What was going through your mind?
I knew exactly what it was after I seen it. I was like, this is another Bigfoot. I was like, I'm looking right at it. I said, it just went behind this tree. And then it steps up from behind the tree, and it's looking at me, and it crouches down, and it's still looking at me after it's peeking its head through the bush. And I'm just like, this is too human. I was like, I don't see how anybody could want to kill one of these things. And that's when I realized there was something more to them than just the ape, because when I looked into those eyes, there was a soul there, so to speak. And what I think the Bigfoot tend to have a watcher status, so to speak. Along with that, the watchers back in the old days, they were trying to gain redemption under God, because of their wrongdoings. Now, the Sasquatch, I believe that the watchers are still in them because it's in their DNA from the fallen angels. So they're still trying to maybe get a chance of redemption, but they cannot because they're abominations in God's eyes. Now, I'm not saying that they can't be saved or anything like that, but who knows?
Right. Can you go into that a little bit, right? When you say they're the watchers, right? Can you go into that a little bit more? What do you mean by the watchers and abomination, just for the audience sake?
Yeah, so the watchers were the fallen angels after they came down, and before the flood and all this stuff happened, they were trying to gain redemption under God so they can go into the heavens. And, some of them, there's still talks that some of them are still chained up under the earth or what have you. That's just your take on that. But the abomination parts fall in because the Sasquatch are not made in God's image. They are made under the fallen angel's image. So that's where the gene manipulation and all this stuff came into play, because their DNA is not pure. Our DNA is pure in God's image, and the Sasquatch are not.
Yeah, very interesting stuff right there. Why do you think, right? Why do you think when you saw this Sasquatch, do you think it was just curious to know what you were as much as you were curious to know what it was?
I think that they were just trying to figure out what in the world I'm doing out there ultimately, because I'm out there walking around in the woods. I'm not just on the trail. I'm out there walking around in the woods with them. And, I think ultimately that they're just curious about me. They may think I'm one of them, as tall as I am, to be honest with you. I don't really have an answer for that, to be honest.
It's just very amazing how it knew to just kind of peek over, like it has intelligence. It's not a dumb creature like some people may think it is.
But this is what I tell everybody. I was like, if they were just an ape, they would already be one in a zoo right now. Let's be honest with you. They would already have one in a zoo, but they don't. And that's one thing that I can't stand about like the BFRO and stuff like that. They don't document any cases of the Bigfoot being seen around the orbs or paranormal activity or stuff like that, because it's all nonsense.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff that you touched base on there, man. I'm just blown away by this experience because I've never experienced anything like that, Well, where I live, it's not too much of a rural area. I mean, we have woods and stuff because we're close to New Hampshire. But it's nothing I've never seen, and I can't tell you how I would have felt or what I would have done in that situation.
Oh, it's special. I'm sure it's special every time I see one, because I don't see them every time I go out, but I'll have some kind of experience, whether it be a knock, a whistle, or the samurai chatter. That'll freak you out if you hear the samurai chatter, because you'll think it's more people coming towards you on the hiking trail, but there won't be nobody. It'll be the Sasquatch talking back and forth in their language. It's like it's like just a real fast-paced Native American language, I think, or maybe even the fast-paced, Hebrew or something like that, so to speak. But I'm not 100% sure. It's some kind of fast-paced language. I've actually experienced the mind speak once, and that was freaky. It was like a voice in my head that wasn't my conscience. Like, I get out there on New Year's Eve, and I'm walking around. I get maybe 100 yards up the trail from the vehicle, and this voice came through my head, and it said Jerome. And I'm just sitting here like, well, what was that? I thought there was somebody behind me or somewhere close, and I was looking around. I'm like, I'm in the middle of the national park. There ain't nobody out here but just me, because my vehicle's the only one here. So I go up the trail a little bit, and I cut off into the woods going through my normal route. And I'm just standing there, and I'm looking, and I come across this huge X. And I'm like, holy cow. So the X means something to them. So I get home, and I look up what Jerome means. It means ancient, elder, or guardian in ancient Greek.
Wow.
So it was unbelievable.
Wow. Very interesting stuff. Did you know that initially what that meant? Or was that something that... when you heard the name, you didn't know what it was. You had to go and look it up to know what it was.
Yeah, I had to look it up because I have never heard that in my life. It was like, it was engraved in my mind after I heard it, because it's just something you don't hear. Jerome. I've never heard that term until I looked into it after I got home that night. So
yeah, and that's the first time I hear that too. I mean, I just had a question. Was this voice, when you heard it, was it something as audible as when you hear my voice, or was something more internal?
Oh, it was audible, like Jerome, like it just skimmed over my brain, like it just came through one ear and out the other. It was wild. I don't really know how to really explain it. It just hit me out of nowhere. So going on that next week, January 7th, my good friends Robert Effler and George Lunsford came up. They're part of a research team that I'm a part of now, North Carolina Investigates. And Robert had seen Bigfoot. I've seen Bigfoot. George had not seen Bigfoot. So we're going through this area, and I'm showing them all the signs and stuff, and I've been telling them what I've experienced because this is the first time I've met them after talking to them on Messenger for like a month. So we're going on up the trail, and we're on our way back, and I just have this gut feeling that me and George just need to go down into this holler. So we stop. I nudged George on the shoulder. I said, "Let's go down this holler right here, and we'll work our way around and see if we can see anything." So Robert and his wife stayed on the main trail. Me and George worked our way down into the holler. We had walkie-talkies. We were staying in walkie contact. So I'm walking in front of George, and I'm kind of looking around, just looking at my peripheral, because if you don't use your peripheral vision to an advantage while looking for these things, you probably won't see one. So we're walking along up through there, and we're coming around the corner on this one hillside, and there's a little valley in between, and then there's another little hillside. And so we're getting down into this little valley, and I catch something moving out of my peripheral vision. I see something black, just a glimpse of something black, and then I see it start moving, and I was like, okay, all right, that's a Bigfoot. I was like, this ain't a bear. This thing's sticking up out of the laurels. So I stopped, and I watched it walk in behind a tree and peek its head out. And I stopped dead in my tracks. I said, George, there he is. He said, Harley, that's a shadow. I said, George, that's a Bigfoot. I said, stand right here. I'm going to walk towards it. And I didn't even walk 14 feet. I don't know for sure. I know I didn't walk very far. And I stepped on this branch, and it sounded like a shotgun going off. And this Bigfoot braced itself on the tree and was leaning out and looking for me because it couldn't see me. And all I hear George say was, pardon my French. He said, oh, shit. And George comes running past me, and I'm like, I guess we're chasing it. And so we go up there to the tree where it was at, and we figure he's about 8.5, 9 foot tall because there was a branch, and his head was right there at it. And right there at the base of the tree where he was at, there was some dirt and moss, and you could see the foot impression. And the 3 toes in the middle were perfect, but there was a slight pinky and a slight big toe impression, but we couldn't really do nothing with it to cast it. So we kind of looked in which direction the track was going, and there was like a big funnel going through these laurels. And I was like, that's where he went. So we're going through them laurels, and let me tell you, it didn't look as thick as what it did, but when we got through there, we couldn't see 2-3 foot in front of us. So we're radio over to Rob, and he's like, well, what in the world are y'all stirred up over there? He said, it sounds like there's a bulldozer coming through the woods, because there were some crows and stuff flew out in front of him, and then he heard him was sound like a bulldozer coming through the woods. And we said, well, it's a Bigfoot. We've run him up. So we get to going through those laurels some more, and we ended up losing track of it. And it was unbelievable to share that experience with him, because he'd never seen a Bigfoot. He's experienced ghosts and UFOs and all this stuff, George has, but he had never seen a Bigfoot until this year. And I cannot believe I made that happen. It was unbelievable.
That's amazing, man. That experience is crazy. It almost feels like they kind of right, because what you mentioned earlier, you said one experience where you were looking at something, you heard a noise somewhere else. So it almost feels like they travel maybe a few of them at a time, possibly. And
absolutely.
And also it feels like there's some that look out and there's some that maybe stay behind. Kind of like a ranking, like people, right? Like we have rankings, managers and supervisors and employees and stuff like that in businesses. It almost feels like they have a ranking system, which is very remarkable, man, Oh,
yeah. They have, they'll have the ones that watch the young, of course, and, they'll be the ones that watch out for humans, and, and they'll be the ones that go out looking for food or whatnot, and then the roles will reverse at night or however it works. They're very, very complex beings. So it was just a really surreal moment to share that experience with him. I mean, I can't believe I made it happen. I'll actually get him in touch with you if you would like to talk to him.
Yeah, I was actually gonna tell you about that later on to see if I could get George on the show, possibly share some experiences. So that'd be amazing.
Yeah, he's experienced ghosts, UFOs, all that stuff. He was in the Navy, so
that'd be amazing. Guy. Yeah, I'd appreciate that. When you said it took off, right? How fast was this thing?
Hey, it was there and then it was gone. I looked and it was there and then I looked again, it was gone.
Wow.
So we named him Alfalfa. Actually, funny story, because when it was sleeting and raining on us, and like his hair was just sticking up like that, so we named him Alfalfa off the Little Rascals.
Hey man, that's a classic. I used to love that movie, man. Wow, very amazing stuff, man. Definitely fast. You know, definitely you have the evidence there, the photos. Is there any other experiences you would like to share with me in the audience here today?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So January 29th of this year, I had my first experience with a dog man.
Wow.
So that was really terrifying.
Thanks for watching the show, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. And thanks again to Harley Owens for being a guest on Apocalyptic Anomalies. Very amazing and very interesting encounters there. So thank you so much for being a guest and sharing your encounters and experiences with us. And remember, guys, to share the show, because that's the only way that the podcast will grow. And make sure you guys give the show a 5-star rating and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you guys might listen to the podcast. And if anyone out there listening that wants to share an experience, please reach out to me, because I'd love to hear from you and have you on the show. Until next time, everyone, stay safe, stay blessed, and remember to innovate honesty and always illuminate the truth.